With question 21 of Prima Secunda, we come to the end of the Treatise on Human Acts, Acts Peculiar to Man, and it has been very interesting to see how St. Thomas Aquinas really dissects the human action. And again, like I've said a couple of times, I think most of the time we only think of actions as being either good or bad, but it's nice to see that there is a lot that goes into our actions, both related to the intellect, the will, the reason, and that's what St. Thomas Aquinas really was getting at. And of course, it's the most fundamental aspect of who we are and what we do, because our lives are really comprised of a whole lot of acts. I mean, that's what we do. We do actions, right? And so it really gets it down to the very lowest particular level, I guess you could say, in many ways. So in question 21, we're going to have 4 articles on the consequences of human actions by reason of their goodness and malice. So what are the consequences, which is a word that St. Thomas Aquinas likes to talk about a lot. And Article 1 says whether a human action is right or sinful insofar as it is good or evil. And he says evil is more comprehensive than sin, as also is good than right. Isn't that interesting? More comprehensive, more broad, more universal, right? For every privation of good in whatever subject is an evil, whereas sin consists properly in an action done for a certain end and lacking due order to that end. And I think just by way of explanation, Thomas would consider blindness or somebody that was born, deaf or dumb, that's an evil in his. It's not a moral evil, but it's something that is not in accordance with nature. You should have working eyes, right? So that's what he's getting at here. It's much broader than sin. Now, the due order to an end is measured by some rule. In things that act according to nature, this rule is the natural force that inclines them to that end. I love this because this has a lot to do with Aristotelian metaphysics, I guess you could say, where substance is informed matter. When form meets matter, you have a substance, and that substance is given purpose. It has a certain inherent drive towards fulfillment or flourishing, and many subsequent philosophers are going to totally throw this out and say, no, there's no such thing, right? In fact, William of Ockham, in denying universals, that was one of his biggest issues, right? When, therefore, an action proceeds from a natural force in accord with the natural inclination to an end, then the action is said to be right, since the mean does not exceed its limits, that is, the action does not swerve from the order of its active principle to the end. And that's why irrational creatures do the right thing, because they are moved to do the right thing by God, by instinct, right? They don't have contingencies, they don't have free will. But when an action strays from this rectitude, it comes under the notion of sin. Now, in those things that are done by the will, the proximate rule is the human reason, while the supreme rule is the eternal law. When, therefore, a human action tends to the end according to the order of reason and of the eternal law, then the action is right. But when it turns aside from that rectitude, then it is said to be a sin. Now, it is evident that every voluntary action that turns aside from the order of reason and the eternal law is evil, and that every good action is in accord with reason and the eternal law. Hence it follows that a human action is right or sinful by reason of its being good or evil. So there he's really talking about what is sin. Now he's going to go into a lot more detail further on in the Summa about sin and how, and he will relate it back to the eternal law. And we haven't really gotten into the 4 kinds of law yet. That's much further down into the Summa, but that's a really interesting part of it. Whether a human action deserves praise or blame by reason of its being good or evil. Should there be praise or blame? Just as evil is more comprehensive than sin, so sin more comprehensive than blame. Again, everything with Aquinas is ordered, and there's more comprehensive, there's more universal, there's more particular. These are important terms when it comes to Thomistic philosophy. For an action is said to deserve praise or blame from it being imputed to the agent, since to praise or to blame means nothing else than to impute to someone the malice or goodness of his action. We don't have praise or blame for earthworms and caterpillars and butterflies, because they don't have free will, so there's no praise or blame for what they do. It's only when there is voluntariness and free will that there can be these kind of things that we speak of. Now, an action is imputed to the agent when it is in his power so that he has dominion over it, because it is through his will that man has dominion over his actions. Hence it follows that good or evil in voluntary actions alone render them worthy of praise or blame, and in such like actions evil, sin, and guilt are one and the same. Article 3, whether a human action is meritorious or demeritorious insofar as it is good or evil. Now, this is similar to the last one, praise and blame, meritorious. He says, we speak of merit or demerit in relation to retribution rendered according to justice. Now, this has more to do with like punishment, right, for sin. Now, retribution according to justice is rendered to a man by reason of his having done something to another's advantage or hurt. It must, moreover, be observed that every individual member of a society is, in a fashion, a part and member of the whole society. Now, this is interesting because he's getting into moral law here, where if something is against the common good, it's going to be considered, punishable by the common good, the community. I think that's where he's getting at here. Wherefore, any good or evil done to the member of a society redounds on the whole society. Thus, who hurts the hand hurts the man. When, therefore, anyone does good or evil to another individual, there is a twofold measure of merit and demerit in his action. First, in respect of the retribution owed to him by the individual to whom he has done good or harm. All right, so he's hurt. You steal somebody's dog, let's just say something that would have been existent in the 13th century and today. You steal somebody's dog, well, you harm that person whose dog you stole. But then he goes on and says, secondly, in respect of the retribution owed to him by the whole of society. Now, when a man ordains his action directly for the good or evil of the whole society, retribution is owed to him before and above all by the whole society. Secondarily, by all parts of society, whereas when a man does that which conduces to his own benefit or disadvantage, then again is retribution owed to him insofar as this too affects the community, forasmuch as he is part of a society, although retribution is not due to him insofar as it conduces to the good or harm of an individual who is identical with the agent, unless perchance he owe retribution to himself by a sort of resemblance insofar as man is said to be just to himself. So this really has to do with the individual being offended, or a crime against an individual or a sin against an individual, and how it kind of redounds to all of society as well. All right. And let's see. Okay, Article 4, whether a human action is meritorious or demeritorious before God. Okay, so we talked about society and the individual, and now it's God. And I couldn't find a picture about, God, so I just, obviously we get praise and blame from people, but how about as it relates to God? A human action acquires merit or demerit through being ordained to someone else, either by reason of himself or by reason of the community. And in each way, our actions, good and evil, acquire merit or demerit in the sight of God. On the part of God himself, inasmuch as he is man's last end. And it is our duty to refer all of our actions to the last end. See how this comes back? We talked about this in a previous video about how everything we do is either for our last end or tending towards our last end. Consequently, whoever does an evil deed, not referable to God, does not give God the honor due to him as our last end. On the part of the whole community of the universe, because in every community, he who governs the community cares first of all for the common good, wherefore it is his business to award retribution for such things as to be done, ill or well, to the community. Now, God is the governor and ruler of the whole universe, and which is interesting because, well, we have a feast day in the calendar of the Church of Christ the King, It's the solemnity of Jesus Christ, King of the universe, right? So that's something we recognize as a Catholic Church, and especially of rational creatures. Consequently, it is evident that human actions acquire merit or demerit in reference to him, else it would follow that human actions are no business of God's. So God is actively involved, God's paying attention, and so we're not only sinning against a person or a community, but we're sinning against God. And God ultimately is the one in charge of everything. All right, that is question 21. And with this, we come to an end of another treatise on human acts, acts peculiar to man. Tomorrow we'll begin passions. And I have an interesting observation about passions when I start the first video tomorrow. So hope to see you then. Thanks for watching. This is the Summa Theologia, one question at a time. God bless you.